Hi, I'm Jana Semeniuk with 360 Alberta, and today we are off to Giovanni's Grand Piano Showroom, where we have a chance to chat with Christian Sirkowski and Stephanie Kwan. These two will be performing this Saturday, November 2nd, at Festival Place in an event entitled Symphony of Sorrowful Song. Now, I'd like to ask you first off, where were the two of you born and raised?
I was born and raised actually in Edmonton, Alberta, so this is my hometown. My parents are originally from Hong Kong, both of them. So I grew up here and went to school and did most of my musical education here until my master's degree, and then I moved out east. And then I did some musical studies, actually opera accompaniment in Italy, northern Italy. So.
And you, Krista?
I come from a Polish immigrant family, so I'm part of the Polish diaspora in Canada. But I spent most of my life here in Edmonton, actually, where I started my piano studies here. And very grateful to the city, very comfortable, wonderful place to raise a family.
So growing up and playing piano, you must have had some heroes that really influenced your path in playing. Can you share a little bit about who your heroes were?
First of all, my mother, who really vied for me to start the piano studies. As a little girl, I wanted to study ballet first, and she got me started in the Yamaha program. And then slowly through that, I studied with Russian teachers, and I was exposed to a whole range of music in the classical genres, also contemporary classical, and so those were my biggest childhood influences.
Oh, and how about you, Christian?
My story's a little strange because, well, firstly, the reason why I started piano was because my parents in England, they met a wonderful family where very wealthy, well-off family, but every single child was raised and taught with music. And they would gather as a family once a week and have joint concerts, and my parents had a vision that their children too would do the same. And as I said before, the Polish diaspora, and so I wanted to play piano because I wanted to play the music of Chopin. When I was hearing the pieces of Chopin and playing his works, I could visualize the Polish countryside and the Polish dances, and it was my way of connecting and feeling Polish.
And so here we are now. It's the two of you, and you've put together an incredible evening of music, but it means more than just the music. Can you tell us what some of the significance is for these pieces?
Well, we certainly wanted to commemorate Remembrance Day, and then also the different aspects of war and the faces of war that perhaps not everyone is fully aware of. Of course, we're from a generation that never had to go through any of the world wars, and so just bringing that a little closer to our generations, and then also the generation from before, and sharing this experience through music. We did a very careful selection of pieces that we thought represented the different aspects of war and different groups that were affected, whether they were soldiers or civilians or other groups.
I've noticed that following the war, there was a generation of people that wanted to leave the history behind. We start fresh, we start new, everything is forgotten. And our generation is realizing that we can't run away from our history, that the trauma and the pain is still there, it still affects us whether we wish it to or not. And so more and more people are returning to history, studying history, and appreciating how it affects us today. And it's also important to realize that we might demonize or try to simplify history in a way to pretend that we're so different that can never happen again. But it doesn't take much to return to these atrocities, to these dark parts of history, and that these were people like us who were brave or who did atrocious things or did heroic acts. And so it is good to remember to respect the heroes of the past and to emulate their good example and to make sure that we don't return to those times.
And Stephanie, I do remember you told me a really incredible story about one particular piece that had to do with one of the survivors. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
So on our program, in the first half, we have a few Polish pieces that were selected by us. One of the central ones was written by Henryk Górecki, and it's called the Symphony of Sorrowful Psalms, in which the concert's named after. Of course, Christian will elaborate even further, being a Polish background. But the text that was taken for the music was from the cell of a Gestapo cell. And the little girl that had written it was of Polish descent, and she actually didn't survive. And so the message bears a lot of meaning because she was in a very desperate situation, and she was still concerned about her mother's well-being. And I think that's what touched the composer to take that text and set the music around it. And so we get a solemn setting, but also some folk elements in the music from the Poland Highlands region.
So Henryk Górecki, his heart was in the southern Poland, and he was a professor of composition in Katowice for a very long time, a very respected musician and composer. And his Sorrowful Symphony at first wasn't well respected, but in the 1990s, David Zinman, conductor, along with Don Upshaw, recorded this Sorrowful Symphony, 1991, I believe, and it sold over 1 million records. It is the most successful contemporary classical musical record in history, and for very good reason. He found that text etched into a wall, and in this situation, one could imagine one would be full of anger, one would be full of hatred, and rightfully so, maybe we would say, locked against your will in a terrifying place. But this girl, she chose instead to write, "Mother, do not cry." In this terrible moment in her life, she was trying to comfort her mother, and then she brings in the words of the Hail Mary prayer, because in Poland, Mary is very much venerated, a very central figure in the culture. And also for Górecki, who himself was very, very Catholic and very faithful. And so he was greatly touched that in this terrible place in southern Poland where his heart lies was a detention camp, a concentration center where she chose to write something beautiful, moving, and peaceful.
And here are Stephanie Kwan and Christian Sakowski with variations on a theme from Paganini. Tickets are still available by going to festivalplace.ab.ca. I'm Jana Semeniuk with 360 Alberta.